chapter 13. We'll begin reading in verse 14, and they will read to the end of the chapter. Hear now the word of God read.
But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. And let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. And let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein, to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are given out, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation, which God created unto this time, neither shall be. And except that the Lord hath shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. And then if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, or Lo, here he is, believe him not, for false Christs and false prophets shall rise, and shall show signs and wonders, to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take ye heed, behold, I have foretold you all things. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost parts of the earth to the uttermost parts of heaven. And every fig tree, when her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is near. So ye, in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass, till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house, and gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch.
Amen.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so much for the reading. I'm going to ask Reed if he will come up now. And as we contemplate these words, let's do something. Reed, if you could just take that reader's desk there for a moment. We started out with the statement that when we see the abomination that maketh desolate stand in the holy place, then this will become a signal event. So I want you to think about this now. We'll have Reed give a thought about the abomination that maketh desolate. But you'll notice the verses that follow. Do you think there's a geographical location for this? Is there anything in those verses that you see that tie this to a point of geography? All right, you see mountains. Mountains are in a lot of different places. What mountains?
Judea.
In Judea. Now, so that's going to get us to a point on earth, is it not, church? Where do you think all this action then is going to be? It's going to be in the land of Judea. It's not going to be a different land. It's going to be the same land that Jesus was born into. It's going to be the epicenter of great intrigue in the very final closing consummation of the ages. So we'll let Reed give a thought on the abomination that maketh desolate.
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, I know that some folks would suggest that Obama's election to presidency was the abomination that made it desolate. That cannot be. because the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet is in the land of Judea, and it is in the holy place. And as much as I admire the presidency, it is not a holy office. So, you say, well, what is the abomination of desolation? Well, frankly, I don't know. Now, it could be. There's a school of thought that has some validity that the presence of the Israeli in the land, the 1948 regime, represents the abomination of desolation in the land of Judea, in the holy place. Perhaps. I'm not saying that is an incorrect possibility. Certainly is a fruitful thought that deserves a lot of attention. They've been there a while, though, now. Years have clicked on by. I can't do the math in my head from 2017 to 1948, but now they've dominated that land for a good number of years. And, for us, we've got to just carry on.
Amen.
And so I think there may be a caution for all of us before we immediately leap into the idea that the return of Christ has to be really, really soon. And here's my caution. And this kind of runs counter to a lot of what we find in our movement. We like to poke a lot of fun at the evangelicals regarding the rapture. Because we say, hey, listen, you guys are waiting for Jesus to come back and take you away. So therefore, you don't need to worry about what's happening down here in the earth. We know better. We know better because we know that Jesus is going to come to earth. And so here on earth, we're paying attention to what's going on earth, whereas you guys are flying off to heaven. Well, it's right to point out that flaw in their thinking, because the rapture is a false doctrine. It is encouraged people to not be concerned about the dominion of the earth. But sometimes we slip into the same thinking in a different way. We sometimes also in our movement, among Israel folks, we don't worry too much about the dominion of the earth 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because we figure it's such a horrible mess, and Jesus coming to earth, that it's going to end any minute. And so why waste our time and energy getting ready for what's going to happen 20 years from now or 10 years from now, because Jesus is going to come and wipe it all clean any minute, any week, any month. And I think that's a weakness in our thinking.
Amen.
We have to recognize that these passages are there for our use and for our edification, but they don't resolve us of the duty we have to think about the near future and maybe a little bit of the distant future. I'm not smart enough to plan 50 years or 100 years in advance. But maybe I can think 10 or 20 years in advance. Maybe I can think about my children and maybe give them a little leg up and think about that. And I think that we need to be cautious in that respect. Now, the details of this passage have a lot of interesting things. I'll just call your attention to a few other things that suggest that we should not be too glib about kicking it too far into the future either. And let's recognize a few realities. For example, in verse 20 we have a phrase that says, "No flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, he has shortened the days. He has shortened the time before he comes." Now, no flesh should be saved. It doesn't really make much logical sense in the greater context of Scripture to say that no flesh is talking about all living creatures on the planet. Everything from the squirrels on down and on up. That no flesh should be saved, I really think is telling us that none of God's people will survive. None of God's Israelite remnant are going to survive unless he intervenes a little ahead of what otherwise might have. So the fact that we are under intense pressure as a people around the world, maybe more pressure than any point in history, certainly more pressure than in many centuries. For 20 centuries or so, our people have been able to be rather numerous and, in some respects, dominate the culture and the civilization, Western civilization. So for the first time in centuries and centuries and centuries, we're in a definitely super defensive position. So that's different. And we do see other things. Jesus does tell us in verse 28, when he refers to the fig tree. He says, when the branch is tender, putteth forth leaves, ye know that when summer is near. So he says, obviously, hey, look, when spring is coming, you look and you say, all right, the leaves are coming out. It's going to be green and nice, and then after that, summer is coming, it's going to be hot. So get ready for warm weather. So he says, in like manner, when ye see these things, know that it's nigh, even at the door. Verily I say to you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Now, 29 seems to suggest that it's really close. It's really close. It's really imminent. But bear in mind, Jesus said this in 30 A.D. And so when he said 2,000 years ago, it's really close. He seemed to be saying at that moment in time, it's really close. I'm not really sure how to put that in proper context because his return is many centuries past. So that's a little difficult for me to put that to wrap my mind around that. But one more comment, it's probably important. And this could take us down a long rabbit trail. Verse 30, I'll call your attention to the word generation. The word generation there sometimes is used as a way to suggest that the second coming of Jesus came a long time ago, and we missed it. Most folks missed it because it happened in 70 A.D. And they'll say that the people that were living alive when they heard Jesus speak these words also had to be alive when Jesus came back the second time. And so they're going to say, hey, the word generation means that bunch of folks that were on the ground, walking around, that particular group of folks, they were still alive, they were older. Instead of being 30, they were 65 years old when Jesus came back again in 70 A.D. And that's their argument. That's the preterist position. The preterists will often quote this verse. Often. To use that word generation there. The problem is that word generation. It's a good word. And if we were living in 1620, we would understand that word better than we do now. That word generation, though, is talking about, and the truth of it is, and I'm not really big on concordance, so I don't really like to rush off to concordance and say, oh, we got to go to the concordance and look up what it really means in Greek and Hebrew. So my red flags go up as soon as people do that, because my whole life I've been seeing people twist Scripture because they run to the Hebrew and Greek concordance. So with that thought in mind, though, it does mean generic kind of species. But if we were alive in the 1600s, we would have recognized that. So it may be better for us to just understand the King's English when the translation was produced than anything else. So that's telling us that this race, this people, will not pass through all these things. So God has given us a promise there. That's really a promise. It's not going to pass until all these things. And that connects us back to verse number 20, no flesh shall be saved. We do have a promise that God's going to come back in time, maybe just in time, to save his people.
Amen.
Which is going to take us perhaps to Daniel chapter 12, where it talks about Michael the archangel going to stand up for his people at the end of the age. And he's going to help, he's going to be an intercessor, an intervener, as you will, to help preserve his people at the end of time. So there are indicators that we may be at the end of time, but let's be cautious and not fall into the danger zone that says, well, I really don't need to think too much about 10 years from now or 20 years from now, because it's all just a big mess. And surely, if he doesn't come on September 23rd this year, it'll be next year, or it'll be soon. And so that there's a danger in that thinking as well. So I hope we can get the balance right as we study this passage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Reed. Do we have anyone now that would like to add a thought to the passages that we've read? Who would like to offer a thought? Anybody? Could I ask the congregation if you'd be so kind to notice, as we turn to verse number 21, we know that a time of great tribulation, such as was not